Father Anthony Giambrone, welcome to Power and Witness podcast.
Thank you.
And you were just on the live show with Father Mitch,
Yep.
and talking about your book from 2022, The Bible and the Priesthood.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk some about that, and also just about Scripture,
Sure.
Just chat about that. You know, I live in the South here, and we have this big shrine of the Blessed Sacrament. We see a lot of Protestant visitors come by. And sometimes they get out of the bus. They look real suspicious. You know, it's an 8-foot monstrance.
Yeah.
You know, reredos, nuns in a cloister. It's like, where did all this come from? Like,
Yeah.
what would you tell the Protestants about the priesthood? I mean, they say, right, it's just Old Testament, right? It's all changed.
Yeah.
But again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not crazy that they're surprised, I guess. It is in the Old Testament, and a lot comes down to this question of how much of the Old Testament comes into the New, or in what way. You know, there's a strong dichotomy that gets inscribed in a lot of Protestant tradition and theology that in many ways comes from Luther, who had a real kind of clear-cut distinction between law and gospel. And so nothing of the old comes into the new. And just at a real basic level, that's not the Catholic way of reading the Scriptures. There's obviously an incalculable newness with the New Testament, and you don't want to underestimate that. But we have an Old Testament for a reason. And so some of it's anthropological. I mean, I think some of the things that carry over, like all the smells and bells, is just because we're still human. We didn't stop being human after the incarnation. Quite the contrary. I mean, God's now got a human nature as well. So it's on the contrary, an affirmation of our own incarnation. You know, our fleshly nature. That continues. And so at a basic level, I'd say, you know, you need to understand that Catholics recognize that order of continuity. At the same time, we believe that the priesthood of the New Testament has been fundamentally transformed. So they'll come in and they'll see, you know, big reredos and lots of bells and gold and all this ceremony and ritual that looks or reminds them of the way that the cult was shaped in the Old Testament. What they won't see is bulls and goats. They're not going to see a big pillar of smoke. And you know, there's not. I mean, there's probably great Alabama barbecue, but it's not a church.
That does send up a pillar of smoke. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's got its time and place, but it's not the way that we worship God. So the cult has, I mean, very fundamentally been transformed. So it's this question of continuity and discontinuity. I guess that would be the first thing to say.
You know, one thing I like, this sounds pretty mundane, but I know, like, growing up just watching like the old the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. And I remember as a kid liking it, looking forward to every year to come on. And we didn't have streaming by a long shot back then. And I just remember being excited, you know, and I think part of like that, the old is fulfilled in the new. And I noticed that with preaching, man, when you talk about the first reading and draw these, this is what Jesus fulfills here and there. And it's like, it's just exciting. And I think part of it is that God, you know, he speaks with history. I mean, he acts in history. And these things that happen, he's speaking to us. And it's just exciting that, hey, God sees us. He's present, he's acting. And when you bring that out, I think people respond to that.
Yeah, they have to. I mean, it's because it's our human nature. We're made this way. We're made to respond to this. So I mean, it's a good design. It's not a product flaw here. I mean, God has given us a way to worship that actually animates us in a real way. And it's too hard. I mean, if you try to just disembody yourself and have this kind of purely spiritual contact with the transcendent divine, you can get bored fast.
Right. I know you all spoke on the show about Melchizedek and things, but if we jump to like the golden calf and stuff, and then, and I was reading this recently, we say like the tribe of Levi, all right, so you had the golden calf incident, Aaron's kind of at the heart of it. He throws the gold into the fire and the calf jumps out, right? And so there's a reckoning here when Moses comes down the mountain with the 10 Commandments. But the tribe of Levi, right, is largely faithful.
Yeah.
And like they're the ones that are called to be the priests,
right?
Which Aaron's part of that.
Right.
But yeah, we speak of an Aaronic priesthood, right?
Right.
Why, and usually we think of like the Levites as helpers, right?
Yeah.
But explain how it did work in the Old Testament.
Well, it's kind of a moving target, which is one of the reasons it's a little tricky. I mean, we say Levitical or Aaronic priesthood. I mean, and that already signals an important dynamic, is that you have kind of helpers and an inner core, because that's also replicated in the New. I mean, Aaron is the high priest. Not everyone's the high priest. Okay, there's this whole clerical apparatus around him, all these ministers, all these orders of liturgical functionaries, and higher and lower kinds of priestly services, and that's replicated really very directly. In fact, acknowledged in a lot of medieval typologies and so forth that saw the 7, minor and then major orders as corresponding actually to what they saw as 7 orders of Levite. So this kind of hierarchy within the priesthood itself. We have one high priest, Jesus Christ, but he's not isolated. He's not alone any more than Aaron is just kind of one-off figure. So the interaction of the two is very important. Aaron is a Levite. He belongs to that college of priests, and so there's something similar there as well. When the Levites themselves, the tribe, acquires, if you like, or merits, is granted, graced the priesthood after the golden calf. That's also an interesting moment because, I mean, we've got progressive moments in which the law keeps changing in response to sin. St. Paul actually says this. The law is given as a response to transgression, and you're saying, I mean, and it's absolutely true that God works with us in time. There's a way in which it's not as though God himself is trying to legislate his way out of a problem, but law gets added to law gets added to law, and this is all what we see. We also get all of the stipulations for the Levitical. First, the ordination of Aaron, of his sons, and all the Levitical sacrifice. And then the first thing that they do is they sin by offering, this is a kind of priestly golden calf. They offer the strange fire. And what does God do in response immediately? He adds more laws. And so you get Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is now brought in as soon as the thing starts to break down. And so there's this dynamic as things go wrong, new elements get entered in, new laws come in, and that's part of what's also happening there when the Levites come in after there's another kind of break in the system. So there's actually a very deep, suggestive kind of nexus of sin and this Old Testament priesthood. It's very important that it's tied up with a kind of compounding experience of Israel's sin.
Right, and yet we're going to talk about it, but we do have a priest, Melchizedek. At the time of Abraham, right? So, because I think I've heard Scott Hahn. I don't want to misquote or anything, but it's like, I know some talk about like there were to be a nation of priests, and like this whole priesthood thing came about because of the golden calf. But you have Melchizedek. Is it just a prophetic figure, or is it?
He's super mysterious, and he kind of stands outside this dynamic in a very evocative way. Like you say, it kind of comes out of nowhere and disappears into nowhere. Offers this this strange sort of sacrifice, which isn't the same kind of sacrifice that is so rigorously legislated for the Levites, and which looks just like the sacrifice of the New Covenant. You've got this bread and wine being offered. And then you have this talk about this order of Melchizedek. He's a priest king. I mean, this is an ancient Near Eastern thing too, is this union of the royal and the priestly. Those dimensions are reactivated in a lot of ways in these prophetic expectations for what a new kind of priesthood is going to look like. So you have these prophecies, already deep in the Old Testament, and not just in the prophets. I mean, so you also have this famous prophecy in 2 Samuel of a new priest. And that captures people's attention. Like, who is this new priest going to be? What is this new priest?
Right.
And you get Melchizedek kind of drawn into that as the image of a different kind of priesthood. So I think it's important that he not get pulled too much into he stands outside the orbit of the Levitical world, and that's largely the point.
Yeah. So you would see, like all that Levitical world as being a result of the golden calf, right? As a response to sin.
Yeah, I mean that's how it emerges. It's interesting too, because you have the Jews of the Second Temple period also kind of speculating, why are the Levites priests? Where did this come from? And so, I mean, one explanation is, okay, they showed themselves worthy on the day of the golden calf, but then you also have these other traditions, like Israel, Jacob gave a tithe on his sons, and he counted backwards from the youngest, and 10 back brought him to Levi. Okay, so he's a tithe of the sons. Or you have traditions that he had a heavenly journey. Okay, and so he's kind of raptured through this mystical experience and given a direct grace by God, and thereby made a priest. Or you have other traditions, like in the Book of Jubilee, where there's this kind of hand-to-hand transmission of a patriarchal priesthood that comes down to him. So you have there's a Jewish scholar I like a lot, James Kugel, who calls this overkill. Like, there's too many explanations for where Levi's priesthood comes from. But all those types of explanation actually also have kind of echoes in the New Testament, and some of those things I think are at work and in the ways that the New Testament also talks about the priesthood of Jesus.
Right.
It's the golden calf, but the Jews of the period thought it's somehow more than that and more mysterious than that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about. Well, let me ask you this question too. Every year I got to preach on Zechariah, and so he's part of this Levitical priesthood, right?
Yeah.
And he's offering incense in the temple. He sees Gabriel, doesn't believe, struck mute.
Yeah.
And Mary believes, in a virginal conception, and
right.
But like, what would Zechariah's priesthood look like? Is that like once in a lifetime event that he blew, or was it?
Right. Yeah, there's some traditions, or you sometimes hear that he was high priest. I don't think that's how he's being presented in Luke there. I don't think that's what we understand. So we do get this language. It was the turn of his, you get it translated in different ways. I mean, the technical language is his priestly course. So there's these 24 groups of Levites who cycle through the year. Those we get enumerated very directly in Chronicles, and they're still, they're talked about a lot in the Dead Sea Scrolls and so forth. It's clear that there was a lot of attention to this idea of the 24 priestly courses, and the liturgical year. I mean, our liturgical year has its seasons and its feasts and so forth. Their seasons and feasts were also coordinated with who was assigned. Like, we have our Hebdom for the week or something like that. The guy who's on schedule like that. So that's something like that. But then within that, there would be this casting of lots. Is it his one time to go in? Yeah. So he's offering the sacrifice. He would have had different priestly roles, presumably. So the closest we get to a kind of full explanation of what this looks like is in the Mishnah, which is a little bit later, but these are probably old traditions. And so what you would have is when a particular priestly tribe or priestly course is on duty, you cast lots, and one guy is responsible for bringing the firewood to the thing, and one guy has the incense shovel, and this guy has that. So you'd probably have one of these various roles or be on the team that did this or that, but to be the guy who's offering the incense.
Would he be in the Holy of Holies? Or?
Well, no. And so that's where this interpretation that he's the high priest is probably not right. So there's the incense altar, and he's offering that. So, but even that, chances are, it's his one shot.
But that would be inside, but not beyond the veil of the Holy.
He's not in the inner sanctum.
And let's talk about Jesus, as Hebrews speaks of him as the one high priest, to be high priest.
Right.
And maybe talk about the typology of the Jewish high priest and Jesus.
Well, I mean, so letter of the Hebrews does, a lot with this, and highlights what I mean, to go back to the question there with the Protestants, I mean, highlights this fact that, listen, there's a radical, abrupt change from the order of animal sacrifice. So I think we really, when we think about what's new in the new, we can't underestimate just how revolutionary it is to break with animal sacrifice. Because like even Josephus, the Jewish historian, says, we don't believe in many gods like the pagans, but this we have in common. We all offer animal sacrifice. So like the one constant in the ancient world, Jews and Gentiles, is you have a big sacred barbecue. And suddenly this group comes along and doesn't do it at all, and radically critiques it. So that's an enormous rupture. And it's connected with this new conception of sacrifice, which the letter talks a lot about, this sacrifice, obedience, this rational sacrifice. I mentioned this to Father Mitch, but this is a big, really a fascinating thing. So you also have a tradition in the ancient world of bloodless sacrifice. And it's the philosophical sacrifice. So you have the Pythagoreans, for instance, don't offer animal sacrifice. But it's not a religion, it's not a cult in quite the same way, but they offer vegetables, okay? And so the offering of wine and grain, it's a type of offering that already existed in the Old Testament. It's the Melchizedek offering and so forth, but it's this bloodless offering. The bloodless offering was seen as pure spirit offering, and for that reason, it was seen as what was done in the heavenly temple. So there's this perfect mirroring, or imperfect mirroring, if you like, between the earthly temple in Jerusalem and the heavenly temple. And just as you have your 7 orders or courses of Levites here below, you have 7 orders of angels, and they're all doing the same sort of thing. But what you do on earth is you slaughter animals, and what you do up there is you offer bloodless, rational sacrifice. And the letter of the Hebrews has enacted, portrayed for us this extraordinary, transfer in which Jesus carries his own flesh and blood up to that place where there's no flesh or blood, and that rational, bloodless sacrifice has come down to earth, and so there's this collapsing and interpenetration of the heavenly and the earthly liturgies, which is exactly what Hebrews is talking about, that on our altar now, the one true heavenly altar and its earthly pole are united in the bloodless representation of that bloody sacrifice on high. So it's I mean, like I say, it's hard to overstate how new this conception of sacrifice is. And priesthood, in a way, I don't know it's a chicken and egg sort of thing. If priesthood is the corollary of sacrifice, but I mean the two go together. You can't have priests without sacrifice. You can't have sacrifice without priests. and the reconfiguration of sacrifice means reconfiguration of the priesthood.
Right, right. And we speak of Jesus as the priest and the victim, as you mentioned, right? And even like holy orders today, right? The priest shares in that sacrifice and suffering for his people, offering penances up and things like that. He's supposed to. Right? And
it's kind of a neat thing, actually. There's almost this objectification of the ordinandi, those to be ordained in Leviticus. When Moses is given the stipulations of how to make a priest, like this has never happened before. God has to tell him, here's what you're going to do. Here's the recipe to make a priest. And he lays out all this stuff you're going to need. And it's a bunch of stuff that you're going to offer in sacrifice, and a priest. And the priest is treated just like the sacrificial stuff. I mean, the man himself who's going to become a priest is like one of the objects that you take. It's very, like I say, this kind of objectifying language. Take a guy, take Aaron, take a bowl, and in that way, I mean, the sacrificial character of the priest himself is kind of profoundly suggested.
And I think that is tied to masculinity in one sense that, Jesus is a man, so the outward appearance there of the sacrament, you have a man. But also there's something transparent about men, I think, that like just revealing the Father or something like that. I mean, the woman, she's kind of the center of the home and stuff like that. And it's kind of, the family orbits around that. And it's almost like she's not really, I mean, she's a representation of the church, but it just seems like, just on a natural level, like men just have this natural thing to lay down their life, where the woman's got to take care of children and she's got to protect herself just to bear children, to care for them. And I read somebody described it like a little boy, he might jump off the roof or something, just to see what it's like, or to test himself. Like he uses his body like to experiment and everything, right? And so to me, it's speaking of like the sacrificial nature of the priesthood, to be a victim. That men image that, and it's like laying their life down for their bride, and of course that's what Jesus does. But let me ask you though. I had heard, and I never was able to find this, but I heard that St. Thomas said something about, I don't know, it's just by virtue of the sacrament, that like the Good Shepherd is present to his people through the sacrament of holy orders. He's present to, and there's something in the priest that Jesus is especially present. Are you aware of that, or his teaching on that, or how would you describe that? Or it's like he hasn't left his flock. He's left. And I think it's more than just being able to confect the sacraments, But
well, I mean, just to speak about the Good Shepherd itself. I mean, part of this expectation of a new priest is also expectation in response to God's own promise that I will shepherd my flock. Not like for a little bit and then I'm going to leave you. So, I mean, I think it's a very profound and relevant moment when Jesus transfers the shepherding authority to Peter. I think this scene in John 21, I think it's misunderstood in a lot of ways, but it's very, very clearly a continuation of that self-sacrifice of John 10 is now being entrusted to Peter. I think it's ultramontane to think that that's somehow not the priesthood and the papacy or something, as though you could talk about the papacy without the priesthood. What it is this radical renovation. I mean, the other way to talk about priesthood is order. Okay, so holy orders. Okay, there's a radical reordering of the scale of values in the world. I mean, this is servant leadership, self-sacrificial love, and so forth. You're not going to lord it over as the rulers of this world. That is embodied in this image of the shepherd, and that that order of authority is being transferred in John 21, and to that extent, I mean, there's this. I mean, I think participation is really the best word for it, but continuation, if you like, of the same pastoral shepherding action of Jesus ongoing in his church. So it's a big shift. This touches another issue. One of the reasons why a lot of people have difficulty seeing the continuity of the priesthood is there's one of the big shifts between the Old and New Testament is this shift to a pastoral register. So the language for leadership in the church in the New Testament is shepherding language. And there's a few reasons for that. I mean, the main reason is it would have been impossible for the early Christians to name their leaders priests, because it would have meant an ethnic Levite who lives on a sacred plantation and offers animal sacrifice. You just couldn't have signified what you wanted to say if you used that word. So there's a transfer of the language that's kind of operated, but that also is highly evocative of this transformation of all the status that was also invested in that old system, and also evocative of these promises that God had made through the prophets to be a shepherd for the people. And so what we see is that the fulfillment of that promise, that I will be your shepherd, and I will give you shepherds after my heart, is through
Ezekiel, right?
It's exactly we get it in Ezekiel. It's then reactivated in the Gospel of John, and through Peter, what we see, and I mean, Peter obviously shares the dignity he gets, because in 2 Peter he says it really directly. He says, I, a fellow elder, okay, the elders among you, so he's clearly in a kind of college. And then he talks about the chief shepherd of the sheep. So we're all under shepherds of this chief super shepherd. And so I think that's where we see that it's not only not confined to Jesus, it's given to Peter. It's not confined to Peter, it's given to all the presbyteroi, all the elders, that is, all the priests. Priest is just the English form of presbyter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elder is the translation of presbyteroi or whatever.
Yeah, and people get kind of caught up with this language. The word priest isn't a Catholic sleight of hand. It's the English derivation of that Greek word from the New Testament, presbyteros.
Yeah. And I guess the point we're making here, and I know the Catechism does it beautifully so the ordained minister priest is sharing in the one priesthood of Christ. So it's not parallel, but it's sharing. And And I just hit me. Actually, I was at a Protestant funeral, a wedding. No, it was a funeral. That's right. It was a funeral. Yeah. And I remember, I don't know what the guy said, something that triggered me, that I thought, because I think he mentioned something about faith and works. And I look at the sacraments as this is God's work on us, that we're cooperating, approaching with faith, receiving. But these are like these places where God is working on us. So it's not our works.
Right.
And it's a sharing in what the priesthood, it's like you're sharing in his priesthood. And
Right.
And it's so beautiful and consoling. I mean, I go to confession, I get spiritual direction, I'm encouraged by other priests. I mean, and people, that's been my experience. I was ordained like in the Boston church scandal time period, and it's like, and I remember talking to one of the upperclassmen that was ordained a year or two ahead of me. I said, what's it like out there? He's coming back to the seminary. He said, the people love you. It's like, there's this kind of fear, like everybody's fed up with priests, and I don't want to minimize hurt and all that. And certainly I have met people that are angry with the church.
Sure.
And in fact, I just met one a month ago. I was in line at the airport, and this guy dropped the F-bomb on me. It's like, but so it's out there. But I think by far most people just appreciate this man vow to celibacy is
Right.
dedicated for me.
Right.
He's hearing my confessions. He's
Right.
giving me the Eucharist.
Right.
What a beautiful doctrine.
Right. Yeah.
That Jesus is present to us.
Yeah. And what a beautiful consolation for priests that it's not on our shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, which isn't an excuse not to give ourselves away, but there's only so much of us to give, and the people need more, and we need more too. And so, that's it. The fact that it's not our priesthood is consoling to one and all.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I went in with a lot of fear and trembling into ordination. It wasn't out of humility or just this. I just felt kind of the burden of doing, and then I thought, how can you do all this stuff,
Right.
But I remember what became the most liberating thing when I realized really that it's a sacrament, that
Right.
we receive a character, spiritual character that enables us to do this. Right?
Yeah. I mean that's why the doctrine of an ex opere operato kind of sacramental security is deeply, deeply consoling. For lay and priest alike.
Right. And I think Vatican II spoke about that. It compared that sharing with the priesthood to the intercession of Mary as like a mediatrix, that she was sharing in him being the one mediator, right? And there's a similarity there.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a deep ecclesial dimension to that as well.
Yeah.
But Mary, the mother of priests, I mean, there's a way in which, to the extent that the priesthood itself is this kind of extension of the incarnational order of Jesus, there's inevitably a deep connection to, I mean, Mary's own instrumentality, Mary's own mediation of that humanity of Jesus.
Right. So we've talked about like continuity and yet this newness. And I think you guys mentioned this on the show, but like, with the Babylonian captivity, the return, right? They didn't have the ark. Prophecy ended around that time as well. And I guess, did they have a high priest during those 450 years or something?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, in some ways, like the high point of the priesthood is when the kings disappear, and the priests kind of step into the to the vacuum, and probably get bigger than their britches in lots of ways, that leads to, in some ways, a kind of glorified image that is apt for prophecy. It's bigger than the reality, but at the same time, there's corruptions and things that enter in that period. I mean, the post-exilic period is both this period of tremendous anticipation, and also kind of deep disappointment. It's kind of a fascinating emotional moment in the history of Israel.
I can't imagine like waiting.
Yeah.
Like the line of kings, I forgot that. The line of kings is cut off.
Yeah.
You don't have the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And then they were kind of dragging their heels, even rebuilding the temple for a little bit, and
what they build is underwhelming, and you know all these glorious prophecies of Isaiah of what this is going to be. So it's it's a very, very provocative moment, and very productive too, like I say, for the prophecy of Israel.
Because a lot of the Old Testament, much was written down, right, in that captivity time, and
No, it's it's really a decisive experience, and it's scholars usually think that this, what we usually call the priestly school, comes out of that. So these this kind of intense preoccupation with the Levitical legislation and all that kind of stuff is at its height right at that moment.
Right. We can wrap it up here soon. I just want to maybe go back to Exodus a minute, because it hit me, actually, was it last night? I was actually praying, and I was praying about something, and and I felt inspired. I love John 6, and in John 6:54, he says, I think he says there, unless you eat my flesh, drink my, no, he says, let me get it right. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have eternal life, and I'll raise them up on the last day. And I was thinking, in Exodus, for them to be spared and to pass over with God to the new promised land, they had to eat that Paschal lamb.
Right.
You prepare it, loins girt,
Right.
whatever. You had to eat the lamb, right? John the Baptist points Jesus, there is the Lamb of God.
Right.
And I thought just too how comforting for some reason that John 6:54 just was so comforting to me. He said, eat my flesh, drink my blood, you have eternal life. I will raise you up.
Right.
That if we're faithful to that, because Father Faber, I heard, he said, this is like the one command of the church that the church fulfilled over the centuries, right? They offered Mass.
Right.
We've had every failure in the book, right? But we still offer Mass. And it's like, it's unthinkable that this sacrifice and communion wouldn't be offered, wouldn't be present for this humanity that's hell-bent on killing, destroying itself. And but to me, it just, the promise of that, and like the tangible, the things, something I can do, I can see, touch, taste, receive communion. We can do it every day. What an encouragement, what a confirmation, what a strengthening that I have eternal life.
It's a beautiful thing. That's a very, very beautiful thing. I mean, that's what we say in the memorial acclamation there. I mean, we offer this sacrifice until he comes. But exactly that continuity through time, and the accessibility, like you say. I mean, that's the point of the incarnation. Is the point of God uniting the human race. Is that it comes within reach. And that's why, again, I don't think we can deduce this from first principles that there had to be a priesthood like the priesthood is, any more than we can deduce that there would be the incarnation. But the Lord has willed that there be this order of salvation that comes incredibly close to us. As you say, you can touch it, you can taste it, and that is a tremendous encouragement.
By such a world that's so gripped by fear and division. It's pushed God aside in so many ways, and we're left with fear. He is present. I've heard this. Close. I've heard that my whole life, spiritual books, all this kind of stuff. But some reason it just hit me in a new way this year, because I think we all struggle with fears and stuff. So.
No, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, Father Anthony, thank you so much for coming, and you did a full day's work today.
I earned my keep.
You earned your keep. Thank you.